Taking a while,
Okay, just up on your iPad, something there. Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our May Council meeting. It's nearly June already. It's amazing how the year's going. So, look, a warm welcome, and it's great to be back around the council chambers again. So, long may it last. Okay, so start the meeting. We have Hazel and Susan on Zoom. And an apology from Andrew, who's still in Canada. So if I can have someone to move and second Andrew's apologies, Councillor Coles, Councillor Gower, all those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Before we actually start the meeting, just letting everyone know that the media are here today, which is great to have them in attendance, but there's going to be some photographs being taken, so that's perfectly fine. Just if keep out of the way is basically all. So there's photos being taken today, so just be aware of that. Item 2 on the agenda is the disclosures of members' interests, and do we have any today? No, I'm just looking to make sure there's no hands come up on the screen. Okay, so there's no disclosures of members' interests. Item 3, are there any late items that anyone wishes to bring up? No late items. Thank you for that. Confirmation of the order of the meeting, item 4. Moved Councillor Webber, seconded Councillor Thomas. All those in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Item 5 is the councillors' updates on attendances, and as I requested last month, if we can just keep those to meetings or attendances that you've attended on behalf of council, but just quickly go around the room if there's anything anyone has to report. Phil, start on you.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The Cambridge Community Rural Tours attended the eastern side, that's Whitehall, Temero and Fencourt a couple of weeks ago. A couple of the things that came up from that was Whitehall, a lot of rubbish being dumped on the sides of the roads and things like that, a bit of an issue there. The intersection on State Highway 1 and Karapiro. Temero was mainly around Grey Road and the condition of that metal road. And Fencourt was the lighting and paths alongside of the road for parents and students and things like that. So, and then the Zone 2 meeting on Friday at Lake Karapiro, which was fantastic. It's obviously great to be networking with our colleagues and learned a lot from them as well. So, yep, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Roger?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. As similar with Philip, I attended the Zone 2 meeting at Karapiro, and really interesting to see those that were there. I was quite surprised there weren't as many there, and it was possibly because it was the last meeting of Zone 2 before the elections, but some really interesting discussion was held there. On another vein, I realised that it's a council working group, but I did attend the urban mobility, both the governance and the workshop group, and really exciting to see some of the initiatives that are coming out of there and the opportunity to engage possibly with some of our community organisations in enabling some of the facilities and support features of an urban mobility network, such as cycle stands and emergency kits and things like that along our existing cycleways. But also great to see how the Te Awa cycleway is just steaming ahead with the number of people going along there. That's fabulous to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
I attended the Kiki Residents and Ratepayers meeting. There was robust discussion over a number of subjects. But yeah, they're in good shape, and yep, the town of Kiki is moving forward.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, like Roger attended the urban mobility meet the governance and the reference group meetings, and I guess the one thing I got that came out of that was just the lack of money. There was some concern around that, those tables around the lack of money in terms of the Waka Kotahi funding, and just really trying to fine tune what the best way to spend the money is. And the other one was after that unfortunate death of that resident, elderly resident over in Cambridge, and I know, Jim, you made contact there. Just had a contact from another elderly resident in Buckland Road in Cambridge about trees. So, I mean, some of our elderly residents are a little bit concerned, a little bit fearful because of some of the trees in town. And yeah, so she wanted fruit trees and for all the oaks to come down. So I said, I can't promise anything there, but I would bring it to someone. So,
yeah. Okay, so just quickly on that, Mike, in terms of the tragic accident, really, but I was really pleased that our Parks and Reserve staff had a really good handle on the maintenance of trees, and there was no indication that there was anything wrong with the tree. It was one of those freak accidents. Yes, I certainly did make contact with the family, and look, they're obviously distraught, but understanding of the situation. So it's bound to raise issues. So we just need to keep a handle on making sure that the trees are properly maintained. But it's the image of Cambridge. So yeah, calls to have trees lowered because of that freak accident is something that we don't want to encourage, I would suggest. But yeah, Lou.
Yeah, thank you. Quietly, we did the urban mobility for the Tiamuru side, and the big thing was the lack of money from Waka Kotahi. I think that's really the confounding part there. We're looking at seating for those that walk or transit between urban, rural and urban areas into the city centre. That's important. I also attended the HTSL opening, which is a large company that has moved up from Otaronga into Tiamuru at Riverlea Drive. They're employing 20 persons and 6 apprentices, and they are a diesel repair shop. And it's really a great addition, as I said to them, into our community, seeing a large business like this actually operating within our area. As I said, I attended the Zone 2 meeting at Don Rollins Centre with all the rest of it. And on Monday or yesterday, I had civil defence. Just a couple of issues that arose from that. And one of them is the confusion over whether a controller at civil defence has total control or the government department, MSD, has control over welfare. So there is a little bit of conflict there at the moment. And unfortunately, it's been, like everything with this government, left to a high level. Everybody's sort of looking at each other on that. So we're actually having some discussions over that. Notable that we had no appointed recovery manager for Waikato. So we did a list of all of the recovery managers. So it's just something to note that I put in my diary that we didn't have an appointed recovery manager. So it's something perhaps we could look at some time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lou. Liz.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, so look, I just want to acknowledge, I guess, the passing of Margaret Evelyn. And I think for Cambridge that has been, obviously something that's been, quite hard for the community as a whole. But I want to acknowledge Ngāti Koriki Kakura, who blessed the land and the space on Victoria Square the Sunday following. And I think that was actually just a really special moment for the family. Also want to acknowledge actually Marianne, because she did a really thoughtful piece in the Cambridge News on Margaret. And I think that was actually just something really quite special. So we'll continue to work with the family, hoping to do a memorial there in the future. So yeah, just acknowledging, you know, I think a lot of thoughtfulness that has gone into that absolute tragedy. Like many others, attended the local government conference zone meeting in Karapiro last week. Just also want to highlight the Dairy Leaders Forum that Susan and I attended at the Novotel last week. Good opportunity to fly the Waipa flag, I guess, on behalf of farmers in the area. And a real highlight for me, again, was of course the Prinz Awards that we had Charlotte Fitzpatrick, who was a previous staff member, myself, Susan, and also Sally Sheedy from Council. So when I went up to the awards, wasn't expecting to win anything, of course, especially when you're on table 23, which is right at the back. And of course, pleasantly surprised that the long-term plan work that our team had done, of course, won the Gold Award, but then went on to win the Supreme Award, and absolute shocked that, you know, surprised, I suppose, but of course, you know, the great work that our team did on that long-term plan, it probably shouldn't have surprised us, because those community barbecues, the speed dating, and, you know, all of those really great initiatives that came from our Waipa team. So just acknowledging that. Attended the Cambridge Chamber Exec meeting this past month, just a kind of quarterly meeting that I do to keep in touch with our business community on behalf of Council, updating them on our key things. Also the Regional Transport Committee, Connections Committee, had a couple of meetings this month. Another highlight for me also was the Grow Waikato Forum, which is a bi-monthly, I guess, meeting that Jamie Strange hosts. And I was able to present on behalf of Waipa what Waipa is doing in our growth space. So, you know, what we're doing, some of the big projects that are underway. And I always like to have a little dig around the fact that, you know, the Hamilton Airport, of course, is in Waipa, so I always refer to it as the Waipa Airport. And when you've got an audience that's mostly Hamilton people, that's always produces a little bit of a giggle. And just lastly, Grey Power meeting, Jim and I attended, yeah, just again to talk to the group there around what Council is up to, because we didn't get the opportunity during our annual plan process. And the Ahaupo pedestrian crossing. So Claire and I, there may be other councillors too, online, just again back in communication with Ahaupo around what the plan is, where the pedestrian crossing and curbing and everything is going to look like. And that was really well received. It was the second Zoom meeting we had done with the community, great attendance. So I think that we'll see a really good outcome there. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I just want to echo what Liz has said about the signalised crossing for Ohaupo. The online meeting went really well, and I acknowledge the effort that staff put in to make sure that, you know, it does go smoothly, and the people that are zooming in, you know, get the chance to, yeah, make their comments and things like that. And I think that really helps the community understand what's happening. So it's exciting to see that finally coming together. And yes, I also attended the Zone 2 meeting at Lake Karapiro, and would like to acknowledge the chair, Toby Adams, and the great way that he keeps everyone engaged and entertained, and keeps us on task too with what we need to do. I mean, I think he does a fantastic job. Yeah, there were some really important presentations there, certainly about understanding how the health services are going to be changing, and also the role of regional public service commissioners. And I don't know whether or not, Gary, we've got any plans to hook into those networks. Like with the health one, they said that they were working with I think it was the Thames Coromandel Council or something, yeah. And maybe we just need to be alert to that, and then what role we could have with the public service commissioners to make sure we can be leveraging, our influence or opportunities as much as possible. I also attended the Pirongia Cycleway meeting, and boy, that's getting exciting. We're so close to getting something happening. Yeah, I can't believe it. Yeah. I better leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Did you want to just comment on the Regional Public Service Commissioners here?
Oh, yes, it's very much in line with what we've been advocating for, especially through the Waikato Community Plan. And so together with Peter McKinley, effectively Peter worked with the regional commissioners for that presentation. And I'm now in a working group with some other CEs from the Waikato to look at how we can formalise a planning process and then to feed community outcomes into the regional commissioners, because of course they're half roles and they're very busy people, and so we need to think about in their interests making it very easy for them to understand the outcomes that our communities are advocating for from central government.
Thanks, Claire. Bruce.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 2 meetings, the ComSafe monthly meeting, which is very interesting in that it's got sad that she's got COVID and had it for 8 days plus. But she did bring up in one of her reports there was concerns at Nanapuri, and she went to see 2 residents, and I didn't know, maybe a lot of us don't, that get onto the police, www.policegov.nz/use/105 for all the non-emergency stuff. I didn't realise you can type it in and you get a far quicker response than trying to use the phone. She said that I thought that's quite interesting. Also, I'd like to thank Councillor Regan for helping in ComSafe and the police with the card. I like this new word, enthusiasts, and the process to develop, and we know there's processes going forward, so thank you, Susan. And another thing for that meeting, which I thought was getting quite low, on the 23rd of March, in a harbour, unfortunately, there were 3 incidents, include plants and hedging that have been on properties for years that were just dug out and taken away for someone else's. Now, the brief meeting was at Kaipake Community Centre, and briefly, there was a focus now to complete that new facility. It's nudging the 2+ million to get at the process at the moment. We've just got to get it finished so that the local community and wider community can use it. So that's a bit of a focus to get that building finished. It is magnificent. Once everything's tidied up, it'll be an asset for council. And one thing of note, that there's this pending resignation of Ellen Bradley. A lot of you will know she's been part of that committee for 46 years. And her husband's not very well at the moment, so she's going to resign. But that's like a lot of those smaller communities, people are given a lot of years. So I think we'll be able to recognise, or even our little community will anyway. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. I think it's important from everybody's perspective is that 105 number for the police, and it's been stressed on a number of occasions that people need to report incidences on that line. So because it's I suppose it's a collection of incidents in an area that actually direct where the police activity is. So a one-off incident, if you don't report it, they don't have any record of it, and it doesn't build a picture. So the encouragement is actually to use that, the non-emergency number, as it were, to actually build a picture for the police, so that when they're planning where their patrols and things are, they'll put them in the areas of most criminal activity, I suppose. So it's really important, Bruce, that number is made available to people.
Yeah, and sorry to go on about ComSafe, but it's a magnificent relationship we now got within the police, the way everything's working. Yeah. And I think it's the personnel within police. Ryan Fleming's number 1. It's working well, and there's a lot of information shared. ComSafe is getting a massive amount of information that the police don't have, but it's shared now. So hopefully we're
Thanks, Bruce.
Bad stuff.
Graham was.
Thanks, Your Worship. No, I haven't been out and about at all because of my situation, but I just would publicly like to thank Councillor Stolwick for attending the land transport meetings at Environment Waikato for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Graham. I can't see any hands up from you, Susan or Hazel. Did you have anything to add?
Yes, morning everybody, morena. Just quickly, as a number of members have talked about, the Cambridge Community Board Rural Tours took place, and I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the second one. not the group of or cluster of halls that that Councillor Coles attended, but probably very similar concerns, generally largely in the roading space and boy races. So quite moderate sort of turnouts, but really good discussion had in all of the halls. And just want to echo perhaps Claire's sentiments around Mayor Toby in terms of the Zone 2 meetings. I attended that one also, and yes, he's been a real breath of fresh air in terms of invigorating people's thinking in that space. I attended, obviously, Liz covered the Prinz Awards event, fabulous to be able to showcase Waipa, little old Waipa at table 23. It was great fun, great night, had by all. And lastly, the Te Awamutu Community Board, miraculously enough, a very short meeting and a very quiet agenda there this month. So that sort of kept me occupied. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Susan. Hazel, I know that you've been obviously laid up for the month or so. So
now I'm just actually I'm just trying to work out this new laptop. Look, I've just started going out and about, and I went to the Kihikihi meeting the other night, and it was just delightful to hear the progress that they're making and how things are going. But first of all, I really want to thank everybody for their calls and for the flowers and cards and things that you've sent me. But I've still got another procedure ahead of me, but I can always join up by this, on this new laptop when I can make sure that I've got everything, all the right buttons pressed. So good to see you all. Lovely to hear all the reports this morning, Jim, and and I look forward to joining the meeting.
Thanks, Hazel. Great to have you back. Excuse me. Look, a lot of the events that have already been touched on, probably the most important meeting I've been to is the LGNZ National Council in Wellington. And the discussion there is the total reform of the local government, I suppose, that's going on piecemeal, I suppose, but from the three waters, future for local government, RMA, civil defence, you name it, it's being changed. So, and we discussed that in more detail. But the real issue I just wanted to highlight really is the Vote 22 initiative that's being pushed by LGNZ, that we really need to try and encourage people, A, to stand, and B, to get out there and vote. So that's really important. And there's some, I suppose, information being provided by LGNZ that we can pick up on and use to try and encourage particularly the youth vote to get out there and take part in local government. I think the real discussion, or one of the points that we were discussing in Wellington, was actually how do you give potential candidates a good outline on what local government is actually going to look like for the next 3 years and into the future, because the change is almost from top to bottom. So realistically, those changes are going to take a bit of time, but we can only go on the information that we've got. So I think just really encouraging people out there and trying to lift our voting turnout above the 43% or whatever it was, which was pretty abysmal, is really important. But anyway, apart from that, that's everyone's comments for this morning. Item 6. Oh, sorry, Mike.
Hey, I know we've mentioned it in other meetings, but I don't think in a full council meeting, a few of us attended Don Duran's funeral. I think there hasn't been a council meeting in between. So just to acknowledge that, and the family just passed on all the support that they felt the Waipa District Council did for them. So that was greatly appreciated by them. Yes,
thanks, Mike. There hasn't been a formal council meeting since, but we did recognise at a committee meeting of the full council. So yeah, that was right at the beginning of the month. It's that first weekend was his funeral. So yeah, that was a really sad occasion as well. But thanks for bringing that up, Mike. Okay, we're on to item 6, the confirmation of the meeting of the 26th of April. Can I have a mover? And Lou's moved and Claire seconded the accepting of the minutes. So if we just quickly go through those minutes, just if there's any comments, I better put that motion though. I've got a mover and seconder. So Jenny looking at me out of the corner of my eye. So all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you for that. Yeah, so just going through those minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And moved as a true and correct record by Roger, and a seconder, Claire. All those in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you for that. Item 7, documents under seal. Gary.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there was just one deed of sublease to the Te Awamutu Community Public Relations Organisation and Northern Health School, which is the eyesight building on the corner of Selwyn Street and Arawata Street, as well as 4 warrants for staff, Your Worship.
Okay. Was there any questions? Lou has moved and seconded. Bruce Thomas. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Item 8, adoption of fees and charges. Gary.
Thank you, Worship. So Graham Pollard is here. There are 2 different types of fees that we consult on. One requires special consultative procedure and the other requires robust consultation under different pieces of legislation. So following consideration of this matter at the 16th of March, I think it was, when we resolved to go to consultation, there was one matter unresolved, and that related to the fees and charges for lighting up the Cambridge Town Hall and Cambridge Town Clock. And so those changes are track changes, and they appear on page 30 of your agenda. But Graham, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, everybody. Yes, as requested, the single fee that we had presented previously for lighting both the Town Hall facade and the clock tower, at Councillor's request, we have split those, and they are showing at the top of page 29 of your agenda. There is actually one other matter that has been raised within the last couple of days with me, and that is a slight correction on page 49 of land use consents non-notified. It talks about natural and or cultural landscape areas. Apparently, I'm told that should read just cultural landscape areas. So the request is that the words natural and /or are deleted from the final version. That's on the top of page 49. Sorry, the bottom of page 49. So other than that, those are just the 2 issues I have prior to hopefully adoption of the fees and charges for 22-23. Thank you.
Okay. So there, the changes are up on the screen for B and C. So with those changes, were there any questions that anyone had of Graham? Mike?
Through the mayor, not a question, just a comment really. And that on page 29, just those changes to splitting out the facade, lighting up the facade and lighting up the clock tower. I would sort of hope that in future, if that becomes automated, to the click of a switch type thing, that those charges would be heavily reduced, because I can sort of, $125 to arrive and set it up, $125 to shut it down. I can sort of see that as hard as it is, but when it does become automated, I would hope the council would look at those charges and reduce them substantially.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Bruce.
Thank you, Worship. Graham, on page 14 of your report, or 32 in our one, on dogs, the urban fee is 92, and if it's neutered, reduced to 82. Just a question: the rural dog, I know it's cheaper, 53, but there's there's many of them neutered out there. There's nothing. Yeah, just a question, a query, because I couldn't.
Sorry, I didn't quite follow that, Councillor. I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't quite follow.
Just the difference between an urban dog that's neutered, whereas a rural dog is a lot cheaper in its fee, but there's nothing mentioned about neutered. And I just wondered, is that part of the fee? Which doesn't explain it. If a person asks me, well, my dog's neutered, an urban dog gets $10 off, why can't I? So that's a question. It's only $10, but it's not. I just was interested. Yes, that's real.
I'm sorry, Councillor, you completely caught me unawares on that one. As far as I'm aware, it hasn't changed from several years previously, but it's something that I can ask the team to look at for this time next year.
Okay, thank you. It's good.
But just from my recollection, Councillor Thomas, there's never been an additional reduction for rural dogs when they're neutered, because the fee has always been significantly lower than the urban one, and that's the reason. So it's an encouragement, obviously, for people in town to get their dogs neutered and stop wandering and all those sorts of things that go with it. But look, it's the rural dog fees have always been cheaper, so there's never been that discount in my memory anyway.
That's all right. Just interested, dog's a dog and they do the same thing anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So were there any other questions on the fees and charges? So we have a recommendation there, A through to D, with the amendments that we've got either on the screen or on the paper there in red. So if everyone's happy with that, can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor St Pierre, Councillor Gower, all those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thanks, Graham. Delegations update, Gary.
Thank you, Worship. So Diana is here to present this report, but effectively there are two delegations to consider. One is for a new role, which is an intermediate planner, and the other relates to changes to a delegation for the release of information which has previously been considered as public excluded once either the Deputy Chief Executive or myself determined that the reasons for that information being withheld from the public are no longer in action. That will require a change to standing orders, which will require 75% of folks voting for that resolution if you're to pass it. 75% of people will need to vote in favour in order to change your standing orders. So Diana, I'm not sure if there's anything I've left or something you want to add in there. But...
No, I believe that's in a nutshell. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Worship. So just add further background. So if somebody makes a request for a previously public excluded paper, then we would look at that under the Lagoima. But what we didn't have was sort of a clearly understood process for proactive releases. So when we decide ourselves without a request, and so this a recommendation would basically set out that process as Gary explained.
Thanks, Diana. Okay, were there any questions? No? All right. I can't see Susan or Oh, she's at the top corner now.
I have no questions.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Sorry, the picture went off the screen. That was all. Okay, so if there's no questions, I'll ask for a mover and seconder, and Mike and Philip second. And this is where we need to prove that we've got 75%. So can I have a show of hands for this resolution? All those in favour? Aye. Graham, you're for it? So, and I see Susan and Hazel have got their hands up. So we've got unanimous for the people that are here. So we must have the 75%. So against, nobody obviously, with it unanimous, or as passed. Thank you for that. So carried. Item 10, resignation of Councillor Andre Wiltons. Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. So there are a number of decisions to make following Councillor Andre Wiltons' resignation. And it's probably best that we work through those one at a time. So just be mindful that in respect of the remuneration pool, that we're required to spend all of that. And so there is a question about how that's to be allocated. So it's not to spend it or not, we must spend it. That's how that's to be allocated. So Joe, if I could pass to you to work through the decisions one at a time, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So Gary, we'll start with the first one, which is in regards to the position of Mangatautari Ward Councillor. So Ellen resigned on the 26th of April. So that creates a vacancy because of the time in the terranium that she has resigned. There is no option to have a by-election. So the options available to you today are either to decide to appoint to that vacancy or leave that position vacant. Unfortunately, with the timing so late in the terranium, that is against us in terms of that decision. If you were to decide to appoint, there's a requirement to not only come up with criteria about how you appoint, but also to do a public notice, and then you can't have that person in place till they're confirmed when you meet a month later after advertising, and then you also have to swear them in. So it would be quite late in the process, and also we would be doing that public notice at a time that we're actually going out to the community and calling for candidates for the Mangatautari Ward Councillor for the next terranium. So given all of that, there is a clear staff recommendation in the paper to leave that position vacant for the remainder of the terranium. And given that staff recommendation, what we have done there in the report is looked at how we need to fill the gap that is left by that vacancy. So then we lead on, once we've dealt with the Mangatautari Ward Councillor, we lead on to recommendation D, which is one we have included there in relation to how do we support our residents in the Waikato ward now that the councillor position is gone, and the staff recommendation is there that we go out and we engage with residents just to make sure that they're aware of where they can go with their concerns now that the councillor is no longer there for the rest of the terranium. So we would undertake that process.
Sorry, yeah, Phil.
Through the worship, just on that, what requirement from there's a community board Mangatautari rep, is he that person, is he asked to step up, or is he asked to fill the place in the sense of people, if the community want to make phone contact somebody, they can contact him, that he'll be the person to contact?
He'll still be there doing his community role, and in that role, he is a member of the community board for people in that community to reach out to. But what we were also looking at doing is making sure that those people in that board also knew that there were councillors out there. If maybe it wasn't a community board issue, it was a council issue, that they knew, who the other councillors were that they could they can talk to. So
I've seen the minutes that Alana Mackay, Community Board member Alana Mackay, did for the rural tours, and that was one concern that was talked about a lot on both sides of the district, east and west. So that needs to be addressed somehow.
Yeah. So we're looking at some clear communication, looking at how we can get out there into some maybe community newsletters or school newsletters, or a bit of a process to make sure that they know that the rest of the councillors are out there and can provide support. You've got other Councillor Regan is another rural councillor. You've got the Cambridge rural councillors. You've got Councillor Weber that's been involved with that ward for many years. That's available as well. So there's a lot of resource that they can call on in the interim.
Yeah. Can I just say that I was the ward councillor out there for 4 terms, 12 years, and lived out there for 36. I'm very, very familiar with the Mangatautari ward. In fact, I still get calls from people because I know so many of them out there. So I think we'll cater for that quite nicely with Elwyn out of the situation. I'm confident of that.
And certainly I attended those hall meetings, and whilst the issue came up, I wouldn't call it concerns, Phil. It was more inquiries as to what was actually going to happen. There wasn't a high level of concern, I would suggest. Yeah.
So then in terms of, we've got recommendation E in there, and that is looking at how we support the Cambridge Community Board with Elwyn gone, and that we're proposing here that Deputy Mayor Stolwick and Councillor Pettit are available to attend those meetings for the remainder of the triennium to provide additional councillor support. In terms of the chair of the Mangatautari Reserve Committee, that was originally a mayoral appointment. So what we are proposing there, that council notes the resignation of Councillor Andre Wiltons, and that that chair position is vacant, and that the mayor exercises his powers to appoint himself as the chairperson of the Mangatautari Reserve Committee, and council confirms that. There's only one more meeting of the Mangatautari Reserve Committee, so it makes sense for the mayor to fill that role for the remainder of the triennium. We have the Heritage Advisory Subgroup as the next one that we need to address the vacancy on. We have taken this opportunity because there was originally only 3 on that group. There were some issues that came up with necessarily people not having enough people to be available. If there was a conflict or people weren't able to attend the meeting, so we've taken the opportunity to look at 2 replacements there.
Thanks, Joe, and I'm happy to be one of those replacements. I just wanted to point out there's a typo in that. Right at the end, attend meetings.
Oh, great, excellent. Okay.
And also the following clause near the end as well, remain vacant for the remainder of the training.
Apologies.
Yeah, no, that's right. Just want to raise
that recommendation. If we could just include those typos, that would be great.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. And so the Councillor Gordon also, as well as Councillor Sydney.
I'm happy to do something.
And then with because just to kind of cater for that small group, we've also proposed that Councillor Thomas acts as an alternate for when any members are vacant. So that's all right with Councillor Thomas. We have a number of positions that we staff recommending we leave vacant for now. That is because it's believed that there's adequate representation and with the work that's left to do for the triennium. That is the JMA committee with Waikato Tainui, the Ngāpai Whenua, and the Pukimoko Reserve, and also the Creative Communities panel. That's not the Creative Communities, is not actually meeting again for the rest of the triennium. So that kind of covers all of the vacancy positions. Then there is the issue of the distribution of the remuneration pool. We do have a short period of time left for that. And so the recommendation on that is just to follow the same principle that you adopted at the start of triennium in terms of the split, the same ratios. The only difference with that table there and will reflect the adjustment in the remuneration is that the councillors drop down from 8 to 7, and so then that pushes everyone up, and that's dealt with by that ratio way, and then that follows the same principles as you've had for the rest of the triennium. And that was considered the simplest way to deal with it at this stage.
Thanks, Joe. I see Susan's got a hand up. Susan.
Sorry, getting a little bit out of practice now with the Zoom get up. Look, yes, thank you, Joe. Lots of really common sense solutions for the situation we find ourselves in. But I guess I just wanted, in respect of that last matter you've raised around the remuneration, I just wanted to raise a level of my level of discomfort, I guess, in addressing those matters. And I guess any decision of this nature, we all, not just me, but all of us, derive some kind of financial benefit, and of course that's a textbook definition for conflict of interest. So I guess I also wanted to acknowledge what Gary had raised at the beginning of this session, that the funds have to be allocated, and also note that there's no other procedure available in terms of how we go about allocating it. So I just wanted to notice my dis-ease on the issue, but express my reluctant support, if you like, and just to flag that we're all in that kind of weird spot, if you like, but that we're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So just wanted to raise that issue.
Thanks, Susan. Did you want to comment on that, Joe?
No, I mean, it's no different from, how we are at the start of the triennium, as Susan's acknowledged, and I think that was probably something similar sentiments she expressed at that point. I mean, there is provision for you to make this decision, and in fact you are the only ones that can make this decision, and you are required to allocate the pool. So there really is, as Councillor O'Regan says, no way of kind of getting around it.
Thanks, Joe. Ken.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, Your Worship, so it's not so much this council making the decision anyway. The ultimate decision is made by the Remuneration Authority. So it's a legislative process. The council make a recommendation, and then the Remuneration Authority make the decision. So yeah, and of course they could decide, contrary to the council recommendation.
And I suppose another safety net with the Remuneration Authority is also to remember that they set the pool. They also set a minimum rate for councillors. So you do only have a certain amount of the pool, which really is at your discretion. So it's not the entire pool, because you have that minimum fee that's for the council rate, and that's the Rem Authority decision. That's not a council decision.
Right. Thanks, Joe. Are you happy with that, Susan?
Yeah. Look, I just wanted to flag that it's a very awkward situation. I'm sure a lot of you around the table share my little sort of level of discomfort there and that. But as you've clarified, Ken, it's actually not our decision per se. It's only our recommendation, and we are in a position where we can really have no other option but to proceed with allocating it, as you've noted. So no, I'm more than comfortable with that, but I just wanted to express a little bit of hesitation and dis-ease about the whole situation.
Thanks, Susan. Were there any, Liz?
I'm not going to talk about the salary, but I echo your comments, Susan. Look, just want to go back to the recommendations. So I support those, and I'm happy to move those. But look, Mike and I had a conversation yesterday around the community board meeting in Cambridge, which is going to be tomorrow. So we've decided we'll both attend for the first one. And again, just to reiterate, I guess, to the Maungatautari community that, there are a lot of experienced councillors, as Graham said, and we're there, we're happy to help. I think a lot of people recognise my number plate on my car. They know that I work in that ward, and I get, and I encourage and happy to accept those that might like to pop in, and I do have a number of those anyway. So, but lastly, just to acknowledge, the work community board and councillor Alwyn did over her terms. She was a great lady, and I know that we all will miss her. But yeah, look forward to obviously keeping contact in the future.
Thanks, Liz. So any other comments? And I note that you said you're happy to move the resolutions A through to J, I think it is. Yeah. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Coles. Were there any other comments before I put the motion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Item 11, proposed amendments to schedule of meetings. Gary, is Joe handling this?
So Joe will handle this. You'll recall that we'd last year looked to have a meeting free of meetings in July so that we could make provision for rebooting all of our business plans and getting organised for the implementation of the year ahead. But this being an election year, we are time poor, and so we have a number of meetings that we need to progress with in order to get through the agenda that we've set for the rest of the year. So hence the tweaking. But Joe, over to you.
Thanks, Gary. So as Gary explained, so we've got some slight amendments to the meetings in July, with that proposing an SPMP and a council at the end of the month, just to make provision. As this is an election year, we are just changing the order of the service delivery and finance and corporate meetings in June, swapping the Tuesdays, and we've noted on the schedule also those workshop and briefing days. So those are the slight amendments that have been made to the schedule of meetings. Does anyone have any questions on those?
Yeah. Mike?
Just a comment through the mayor. Just appreciate the fact that we do have to have them, and that you did make, I guess, allowance to stay out of the holidays, which a number of us had probably expressed that we'd sort of sorted out. So just greatly appreciate that. So I think we're going to achieve what you want to achieve. The other thing, though, of course, is just moving forward is with the Zoom option now, it's actually, you know, at least as these examples today, people can attend these important meetings, including workshops, without physically being here. And I think that's a massive plus that has come out of COVID.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Gary?
Joe, could I just ask if you know whether the arrangements that central government put in place to allow for these meetings to be conducted partially via Zoom, are they continuing?
They are coming up for renewal in June, aren't they? I can't remember the exact date in June. So we will keep an eye on that through our channels. Taituara, Raymond is very good at keeping us informed as to when that has or is due and what's the likelihood of it rolling over. So we'll keep an eye out on that.
I just wonder, on that basis, we'll express a desire to continue with this current arrangement post the COVID settings.
Yeah, Roger.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think Gary might just have addressed that. My understanding is that those arrangements were whether or not the people that were Zooming in could actually contribute to a quorum, but it means that even if they didn't, then the councillors that attended would still be classified as attending, even though they were not one of a quorum.
Yes, that's correct. It just without that order, we do just have to be when that is removed, we will have to be quite mindful of who is in the room, because the last thing we want is have a meeting scheduled and not actually have enough people physically present to be able to start it. So we've been quite lucky in this period that we've had that great flexibility that it doesn't really matter as to where people are, but yeah, it will change when that's removed.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, any other questions? Who's moved it? Yeah, Mike seconded. So moved Councillor Gower, seconded Councillor Pettit. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. And item 12 now is a resolution to exclude the public. I have a mover, Councillor St Pierre, and